All right, thanks for joining Return on Podcast. Tyler Jefcoat here with Seller Accountant. I want to welcome you to today's episode where I get to interview one of the monsters in this e-commerce space, Ben Leonard. We're going to talk a pretty wide-ranging conversation about what it took to build a brand for him, right? He exited, now he's building subsequent brands. And there's some art and science to why you should build a brand, what the current best tactics are, right? I mean, you could kind of get away with not going all the way to brand building a few years ago. And guess what? Those tactics are evolving now and are requiring more of our attention. We talk about mission, we talk about profitability, we talk about KPIs, we talk about life hacks per normal. I think you're going to love this interview with Ben Leonard of eCom Brokers. He also recently wrote a book called Quit Stalling and Build Your Brand. Listen, I recommend very few e-commerce related books. Ben's is one of them. It's really, really good. So for what it's worth, I'll make sure there's a link to it in there. Check it out if you're looking for some guidance on where to start developing new products or developing your brand to kind of expand into Amazon or beyond Amazon. So without further ado, let's jump into this conversation with Ben Leonard from eCom Brokers. It's time to maximize profitability and cash flow. It's time to learn habits and hacks from the best eCom CEOs. It's time for Return on Podcast with me, Tyler Jefcoat. All right, today I'm happy to welcome my friend Ben Leonard to Return on Podcast. Ben is a seller, brand builder, the co-founder of eCom Brokers, and is the author of a great book, Quit Stalling and Build Your Brand, which I left a 5-star review on Amazon. You should buy it and do the same thing too. Ben, welcome to the show today.
Good to see you, Tyler. Thanks for having me back. And thanks for the review. Didn't know you did that.
It's like, this one was totally white hat, by the way, not unsolicited, right? No TOS violations involved, right? So, Ben, I want to talk about building a brand today. You've done a lot of this. You help a lot of your customers do it. But first, just give the audience a quick update on what you're up to, how come it is, Ben, that you don't have a regular job like your mom wanted you to get and you're doing all this entrepreneurial shit? What happened?
Yeah, it was an accident. I did have a regular job. So I'll try and keep it brief, and I won't keep it too boring for people. So I'm coming to you from Northeast Scotland, specifically a small city called Aberdeen, which is an oil town, right? So it was almost inevitable I would end up working in oil. So I did 2016 or 2015, 16. I got super ill with a heart problem, had to stop work for a while. While I recovered, I decided to start this idea that I'd had for like four years and done nothing about, which was to start a fitness brand, to sell the products directly into gyms. It was a disaster. I got laughed out of the gym. So I sold the products online. That was not a disaster. Turned out I was good at it. Grew it, quit my job. By late 2019, it was doing about $6 million per year in sales, selling in mostly the UK and Europe. And so I sold it. And now I'm continuing to build brands because I love it. And I've realized I know how to turn an idea into a valuable asset that one day I can sell. I teach other people with my consulting. I help others to plan and execute their exits with eCom Brokers. And like you said, I just wrote a book, all about how to build a successful e-commerce brand. And I love it. So I'm kind of grateful that I got sick back in 2016.
Yeah, it is great. I mean, when you think about a book that's entitled "Quit Stalling and Build Your Brand," it's amazing how sometimes life has to happen to us like that. Life just has to slap us around and give us the space to create what we're probably always destined to create. So good for you. So thinking about building a brand, like you've done this a couple times now. You coach a lot of clients. Like, I'm just curious. There's a difference, I think, between being a seller of products and a builder of a brand, whether it's on Amazon or another marketplace. Should
Yep.
everybody build a brand, Ben, or how do you coach your clients in terms of deciding whether to put the extra effort into building an actual brand?
Yeah, in my view, everybody should build a brand. I think that there was a time, 2015, 16, 17, when you could just slap stuff on the internet and mostly on marketplaces like Amazon and sell it and make some money. And there will be people listening who got in at that time, who've got a very good business that isn't represented by a brand that's doing perfectly well, thank you very much. And I don't
Mhm.
need you to tell me, Ben, that I need to build a brand. To which I would argue what you've built is much less sellable and sustainable than a legit brand, because what you lack is a tribe of raving fans who will buy everything that you launch. You
Right.
lack that repeat custom. You lack the connection that real brands have with their people who will support them, perhaps fiercely support them and defend them, and prop them up every time you launch a new product. And if you're trying to get into e-commerce now and build something from the very beginning, it is much, much easier when you actually forge a connection with people rather than being on what I call the hamster wheel of, you know, good enough listing, good enough advertising campaigns, probably pay per click if we're talking about being on Amazon, rinse and repeat and get more sales,
Right.
which is what so many people do. But if you actually go to the effort of connecting with your customers, building a relationship with them, and then getting them to buy more stuff from you because you have a real brand, then you're not stuck on that hamster wheel because you have so many other opportunities to get that flywheel spinning because you've developed a real relationship and have a real brand.
Yeah, it makes sense. This kind of dovetails into the. I've been thinking about this a lot, Ben. And the cheese is moving, the game is evolving, and it's not the first time that it's changed. So, like, I was thinking about my friend James Thompson and some of the guys that were early sellers on Amazon. Think like 2010, prior to you and I even being in the space.
Yep.
The most effective tactic available in 2010 was see product, list product, count money. That was it. That was the entire meta. Like, if you wanted to understand what the most effective tactic was, find a product that wasn't already represented and address it. And right before you and I got knee deep into this game, this thing called PPC arrived on the field that made it to where the meta had changed. And now the guys that counted lots of money every day were the ones that figured out, keyword based, algorithmically driven PPC. And I think,
Yep.
to your point, the meta is changing again. That most effective tactic is evolving. And I believe it's evolving toward having a real moat. And that moat's either in the form of an IP product or a tribe of people who love your brand enough to buy from you. And I don't know, what's your reaction to that? What do you think about the evolving landscape?
Yeah, and hopefully those two things, IP, a tribe, and more. The more things you can do to build a moat around your business, the better. So let's take that hamster analogy and make it slightly more crazy. Um, a genetically modified goldfish hamster hybrid. It's a hamster stuck in a goldfish bowl. So here's where I'm going with this. Not only are so many e-commerce business owners stuck on this hamster wheel, but they're also stuck in the Amazon goldfish bowl. Their business is completely isolated. They're doing nothing outside of Amazon. They're not driving any other traffic into Amazon. They're not getting any sales outside of Amazon. And they're wholly reliant on whoever's putting the fish food into the goldfish bowl and whoever's changing the filter, right? They're wholly reliant on Amazon. Contrast that with a quote unquote real brand, which is a free shark, right? And it's swimming around the ocean and it's got access to rivers and lakes and ponds and streams and all these other partners in this real wide ecosystem. Which one is stronger and has is more sustainable and more longevity, right? And so that's where the whole idea of this famster, this genetically modified goldfish hamster, is not only are you on this hamster wheel, you're stuck in a goldfish bowl. And it's a dangerous place to be. But if you were to treat your business with the respect it deserves and treat it like a real brand, you would have all these opportunities to create moats around your business. So you mentioned IP there. But what else can we do? Well, we can have a diverse range of traffic streams coming from a diverse range of channels. So you might be driving traffic to your business through YouTube channels, through social media, through email newsletters, through blog articles, through podcasts, through the same channels as what I've just mentioned, but they might be your own or they might be other people's and you're sponsoring them. So many, you might even have apps, right? And somebody listening to this to whom this all sounds completely alien, I would say It doesn't have to be, because there's a really easy way to think about this. Go look at your favorite brands, your favorite products. They could be related to your hobbies, or like even the food products in your cupboards, and ask yourself how you feel about those brands. And then ask yourself, how do those brands make me feel that way? Well, they make you feel that way by how they connect with you and how you perceive them in the world. And that's probably to do with the way that they're marketing to you, whether that's through content on social, through emails, through YouTube videos, through sponsorship of podcasts, through having an app, all these different things. And what we need to do is stop treating our businesses just like selling stuff on the internet, and treat it with the respect it deserves, and treat it like a legit consumer goods brand. Just because your favorite brands are enormous doesn't mean you can't behave like them too. It's all relative.
Yep. And what's interesting about this, and you being in the broker space, saw this firsthand, like we did here, and the influx of smart money over the past 4 years kind of gave us a false incentive to have a really simple, just Amazon, just five ASINs, just clean, like just one supplier. It actually made us money in 2020 to have a simpler, streamlined, easier to integrate brand until the aggregators ran out of cash. And then all of a sudden, there's kind of been this regression to what you're saying there, Ben, which is just common sense. Like, I want to have a meaningful relationship with my customers. I've got to know who she is. I got to know what her problems are. I've got to understand what it is that bugs her. And you mentioned this in your book about the why, the passion, the mission. Like, speak to that a little bit. How important is it for brands that are trying to build an identity to be rooted in something? And maybe like think about it like this. Like, I sell bookkeeping, which is really not sexy, but I think mission is incredibly important. Like, would you say that there's a way to build mission into every industry? Am I right about that?
Yeah, there is. And uh, again, some people listening will say, "Well, I've never really thought about my brand's mission or purpose or vision, and we're generating X amount of revenue and X amount of profit, and we're doing just fine." Great. You can strengthen your business even more if you think about this.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go off on one, but I promise it'll make sense. So
Do it.
a lot of people argue over what a brand is, but I think basically everybody's kind of thinking of the same thing, which is this: a brand is a group of products or services, but let's talk about physical products. So a group of products that solves problems for a group of people. That could be knitters, or it could be scuba divers or dentists, whatever. Branding is how you make people feel. And branding, being how you make people feel, the way you do that is made up of two things. One is marketing, because marketing is how you deliver the feelings. And the other is something that I call brand DNA. And brand DNA is made up of your brand purpose, your brand vision, mission, sorry, your values, the promise you make to your customers, and various other components. But the big three are purpose, vision, and mission. So let's talk about those. So your purpose is why your brand exists. Like, what is the point of it? And it goes beyond profit, right? So for instance, if you take my first brand, which was a fitness brand called B Skier, the purpose of B Skier was to stand against the status quo of the fitness industry so that anyone could have access to high quality fitness gear at a fair price. The vision is where you're going as a result of your mission.
Mm.
It's a statement of what does success look like. And you got to think about it through the eyes of your customer. And it can be quite helpful to make this like something relatively unrealistic. Doesn't matter. So, for example, for B Skier, the vision was to become the go-to fitness brand. Of course, that's extremely unrealistic. Never going to happen in a million years. Doesn't matter. It's just got to be something that pulls you in that direction.
Mm.
So, if the purpose and the vision, they're quite sort of grand ideas that I've just mentioned. They don't feel that close to home. That's where the mission comes in. That's the nuts and bolts of, well, how are we going to do this? So B Skier's mission was, well, we're going to do this by selling quality fitness gear online with excellent service to match. So if people can nail those three things, they'll really have a much better understanding of what their business is supposed to do. And so many entrepreneurs I speak to, I say, so what does your brand do? and they kind of go, well, we sell these things, and the thing
Yep.
is, they know what they do, but they can't communicate it.
Yep.
So if you just take some time to figure out your brand DNA and make sure that it reflects who your customers are and what matters to them, then you'll be in a way stronger position than half your competitors. And people will be listening to this saying, yeah, but Ben, what's the tangible impact of that? What does that mean? Well, it becomes a lens. It becomes a lens or a filter through which everything to do with your business shines. So this product title, these product images, the copy on this page, this email I'm going to send, this social media post, what I'm going to put on my packaging or in my insert or whatever it might be, shine it through the lens of my brand DNA. Does it make sense to who our brand is and who our customers are and what they care about? Yes, great, do it. No, okay, we need to change it a bit. So that's kind of why I think that matters.
It's huge. And I mean, again, guys, I sold a healthcare company and built an accounting firm. Like, I just want to say this. I believe everything Ben just said, and it doesn't matter what you sell. If you can't find a mission that gets you excited, that gets you out of bed when it sucks, when it isn't fun to grind out this particular brand, it may be time to put together an exit strategy to build a different brand that matters to you. Because here's what I found. Now, listen, when I'm trying to keep the lights on, the mission can be really simple: make money, make money, stay married, make mortgage payment, right? It's like things are very
Yeah.
simple. But as soon as I get like to any level of lift in the business, doesn't matter what I'm selling, whether it's a product or a service, all of a sudden I am absolutely at the mercy of engaging other people in my mission because I can't do it all by myself. And so again, it just took time. If you're being lazy about it, if you're stalling, this is the part of building your brand. You want to pause and say, what are my core values? What is it that is my heartbeat as a person? And how does that connect to my audience? What matters to them? And then to your point, it actually gives you a shortcut, Ben. Like if I'm trying to figure out of all the millions of marketing tactics I could experiment, not all of them are going to work. But if I can use that lens filter that you're talking about to say, okay, wait a minute, I know who my audience is. He looks like this. He's from Aberdeen. He's a good looking dude. There's my audience.
Mhm.
And then if I can use that filter of my brand DNA to say, and this is what we're about, then I can make much more intelligent shots. And I'm going to hit some of those shots much more quickly than if I just, spray paint.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then your marketing is going to be more effective, right?
Yep.
Because you can actually tell people about it. It's like you could have the most quality products in the world and the best branding in the world on paper. But if marketing sucks, it might as well not exist.
I
It's
agree.
kind of like if a tree falls over in the forest and there's no one there to hear it, did it make a noise, right?
Mm-hmm.
If nobody's heard about your brand, it might as well not exist. Seth Godin, fantastic marketer, one of my favorites. He said I'm gonna butcher it a little bit, but he said something along the lines of, "You're either remarkable or invisible. Make a choice."
Wow, that's a great quote. I love that guy as well. So you made the comment, and it's so true that building a brand can't just be about profit. Life is too short. And by the way, I'm saying this as an accountant, and Ben saying this as a guy that wants to get you top multiple when you exit your brand. It can't be just about profit. We can't reduce it to just profit, but it has to at least be profitable, right? I mean, you say in your book, every product must be profitable. I just want to talk about the number side of this for a second. When
Yep.
you're launching a new product, I know you're telling me that you're about to launch kind of your new brand here as a seller. How do you nurture a new product? How long do you give it before you're ready to make it either it's got to stand on its own 2 feet or I'm going to have to cut it out? Like, how do you view the kind of
Yeah.
profitability side of launching new products?
It depends on everybody's circumstances because some people will have the budget to allow something to not be profitable for a while because they're going to brute force their way through, and that's intentional and it's part of their business plan. It's absolutely fine.
I
But
think his
others who
name's
don't,
Jeff Bezos, by the way. I think Bezos, that might have been his
yeah,
business.
his name is Jeff. Yeah. And other people won't have the budget for that. That's also fine. But you're going to have to be very, very careful when you're validating the unit economics and validating the market that this is going to work. So I want to see a really, really high net ROI of more than 100%,
Okay.
at a minimum more than about 70%, So if your net ROI is less than 100%, then you know you're going to have to keep putting cash in there so that your business can grow. And that's absolutely fine, provided you know that and you're prepared for that. It could be that when you start, the ROI is less than 100% because you're placing a relatively small order and the unit economics, the economies of scale just mean that you haven't got your cogs down yet. But
Right.
if you're patient and you're prepared to wait, by the time you're placing much larger orders, A, you've negotiated a lower price with your manufacturing partner, but B, you're benefiting from lower shipping costs per unit because of economies of scale. And also you've nailed your advertising strategy by this point, then your net ROI could then be well north of 100%, and you're on to a winner. You've got enough cash coming out that you can afford to place larger orders, launch new products, spend on marketing, etc., etc.
So to
So
bring that KPI down a little bit, just in case you guys don't know what you might have heard is like return on inventory investment. Ben's calling it net ROI. And what that means is your actual contribution margin, your profit after Amazon fees, cost of goods sold, and advertising. So think about that percentage. Maybe it's 25% is your actual true profit divided by the percentage that's your cost of goods sold. So this is a really, I love this 100%. If I have a 25% COGS factor, and I have a 25% net profit before my overhead, right? Kind of think about my true profit margin. That gives me exactly 100% ROI, right? I made 25 cents on the dollar. I spent 25 cents on
yep.
the dollar to buy the original product. That is a really sexy bar, and I love it. I think if our brands can get better at orienting around those kinds of margins, Ben, it just gives us so much more of that budget you were talking about to outspend our competitors for marketing for the first
Yeah.
6 months, right?
Uh, exactly, and this is where people fall down because what they do is they run the numbers and they see that their contribution margin is in the black, and they're like, "Great, this is profitable. This is going to work," but they haven't thought about return on investment,
Right.
and you can seriously run into trouble that way. And also, the other thing that people do is they don't factor in various other costs, so they don't think about things like return rate. So when they're thinking of, they don't factor in what hold on, we haven't accounted for returns here. And if you've got a return rate of 4, 5, 6, 7%, then that can really make a difference.
Yes.
Storage fees as well. People don't think about these things. But what we can do is suppose we are trying to validate a product that we're going to launch and the ROI is not coming out quite right. But we can have conversations with our manufacturing partner and say, well, look, for this to work, be open, show them your calculations. Look, this is what we're paying you for it. This is what we're going to sell it for. This is the ROI. It's not quite going to work. A, can you help me get the cost down now? But B, let's work together on a path to a price point for me where this is going to work. So let's talk about what are the unit order numbers where you're going to give me discounts. And
Yep.
people forget that your manufacturing partner is the most important partner in your entire business. I literally fired off an email this morning to a manufacturing partner of mine on one of my brands, basically painting this picture with tables, with charts showing, look, this is how much we can sell if we have a bigger margin to allow us to market more. And if we can sell this many more units, you win. But we can only do that if we get this lower price point and these payment terms. And I'm not trying to screw them because I
Yep.
want them to win too. I'm trying to paint the picture of how we both win. So
But
people,
you
I think, need
mentioned
to
two
think.
important things there that unfortunately, Ben, are kind of rare amongst a lot of the sellers that we have started working with. They get there. But two things you said. One is I need to take the time to invest in the relationship with my supplier, dust off a passport, drink sake, kiss babies, like do the thing to develop those relationships.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is I got to do some math because if I can take the time to generate a 12-month, they call it a pro forma into the future, and actually know my numbers, it gives me power in those negotiations in two important ways. One is I can say, boss, I really cannot pay $10 a unit. I'm so sorry, but this is the way it works. It's going to have to be $8 or I can't do this. The second thing is what you just mentioned there, Ben, which is you can say, hey, friend, who I've just had meals with and we have a relationship with each other. I have a vision for the future that's bigger than this load of 1,000 units you're making for me today. but I need your help to get me there. And our suppliers can help us by lowering the price, lowering the MOQ, delaying the payment terms where I can get more mileage on my dollars or euros or whatever I'm using to fund the business. And man, I want people to hear the punctuation of that point. If you're not spending some meaningful percentage of your CEO brain space nurturing your supplier relationships, you don't want to wait until you have an emergency and need something from them. You got to nurture those relationships on the front end.
Yeah, you do. Like people forget how hard it is sometimes for the manufacturers. So case in point, this particular guy who I've worked with since 2017, he used to, with all of his clients, e-commerce business owners like me, it was always they'd pay 30% down and 70% on shipping. But now everybody's asking for terms. And so he's struggling with his cash flow because he needs to pay for raw materials. And so my terms with him that we had for this particular guy were we were paying 25% down, 25% on shipping, and 50% after 60 days. So I said to him, look, we still need to pay 50% after 60 days, but let's front load the first part. So instead of being 25% down, 25% on shipping, I said, why don't I pay you 35% down, 15% on shipping? That way you have more money to order raw materials. And he's like, great. I take a small hit, really not that big of a deal, frankly. And it helps him and it shows him that goodwill. So then he's going to move a bit for me on the actual unit price.
Yep.
And people forget it's not all take, because you got to remember these guys are running just as you have struggles in your business, they have struggles in their business.
And I think what's so great about this is, and I talk a lot about this in our content here, is when you talk about return on inventory investment, that's kind of like your batting average if anyone's into the US sport baseball here. Or Japanese. Those guys are great at it, by the way. But like your ROI or that net ROI is kind of your batting average. And the number of at bats you get each year, or how many times I get to recycle that dollar. So the quicker I can make my cash cycle move, the more times I get to have an at bat. And guess what? You give me 10 at bats, I'm going to get a hit eventually, right? And so I want to have more velocity. But if I know my product well enough, like Ben was just saying, and I know, wow, I already have pretty good terms on these payments. I get to wait 60 days. I've got some additional liquidity. I've got cash in my bank account. I know what I can do. I can offer to pay a little bit more in the form of deposit in exchange for actually getting better raw materials costs. I can actually get my cost of goods sold down 10%. And so the point is that which lever you should pull on your dash depends on your cash position, how healthy your products are, and frankly, what Ben was saying there, how healthy your relationships are with those suppliers. But there isn't a one size fits all. You actually have to know your business numbers so that you can know which lever to pull.
Yep. And people can get deeper as well. So pay attention to the exchange rate. If the exchange rate moves in the favor of your manufacturer, whether they're in China or India or Vietnam or Pakistan or wherever it is, talk about that with them. Or go even deeper. So I just helped a client with this. He's selling a product that's made from a particular raw material. Well, we went and did our homework and tracked what the price of that raw material is. The price of that raw material has dropped significantly. And we said, look, listen, guys, we know it's costing you less to make this because here's the index price of this raw material. So we kind of need your help here. And they probably wish we hadn't gone and done that homework, but we did. And they're like, well, yeah, fair enough.
I love it. Again, mind your business. This is a part of your business you have to mind. Hey, because you live in this kind of acquisition space, Bennett, I didn't want to let you go without asking this question. Buddy, you and I both know that the last 2 years haven't been as frothy as the 2 years that were prior.
Yep.
But I'm just curious, kind of your current mood, your prognostication in terms of maybe capital markets and in terms of investors and in terms of just the acquisition space, like any sense or feeling that you're hearing or kind of conversing with investors that has you worried or excited?
I'm very positive because I feel like the space is getting more intelligent.
Okay.
The 2019 to 21 time of the aggregators, the first coming of the aggregators, we'll call it that. there was a lot of, what should we call it? Financial engineering. Hey, we're going to buy all these businesses at a low multiple, roll them up. They'll immediately be worth more. We'll either sell them or go public. Works well on paper.
Yep.
Has worked well for some. Has it worked for others?
Right.
But I think that thesis has been proven to be, whilst workable, not as straightforward as one might just assume. And the space has matured, which means that those willing to put in the efforts to build real brands are at an advantage over those who are just kind of selling stuff. And I would say that a lot of very mediocre business owners got very rich for a while, and more power to them.
Yeah.
But what now excites me is the fact that I'm able to help people who are putting in the effort to build fantastic consumer product brands, take them through a mature process and sell them to a great buyer who's going to be able to take the baton and take them to the next level. And I think that's really exciting. And we are still seeing great deals being done where the right buyers have been able to convince investors to give them the money because they've actually got the operational chops. They said, look, we've watched various others in this space kind of go and get it wrong. And we were able to get it right because, and they can demonstrate from their track records that they can actually do it. Because a lot of them, rather than being just financial guys who've decided to go buy a bunch of e-commerce businesses, they're e-commerce guys who've decided to go buy a bunch of e-commerce businesses.
Right.
And in many cases now, we're not just selling to these quote unquote aggregators. We're selling to far more mature buyers, whether they're strategics in the traditional sense or they are aggregators who've kind of grown up a bit. I spoke to one the other day, a European aggregator, who asked me not to call them an aggregator. They said, no, we're not an aggregator. We're a digital brand house. I was like, okay, cool. Digital brand house. That's what we'll call you.
Love it. Yeah, I think I just resonate with what you said there. I mean, this is I think the new landscape is going to really encourage us to do the things that you've written in your book, Ben. And so I really appreciate you writing it. And I just want to again just kind of punctuate what you said there. Now is a great time to invest heavily in building legs, boots, feet, moats, relationships within your brand. You're going to be rewarded for doing things the right way, for building those real relationships with your customers and with your suppliers. And now is also a great time, if you know what your core strength is as an operator, to look at picking off a smaller brand and maybe acquiring something that just needs to be operated better. And so I think my mindset as an investor this year, Ben, is same as yours. Guess what? Multiples aren't right now what they might be in the future and what they were a couple of years ago. That means it's a great time for me to build my own equity in my company and also buy equity in others by, frankly,
it really is. It really is. We are selling good businesses now, which have got tons and tons of growth opportunity, and they just need the right operational chops. And we're seeing smart people do that. So if you're listening, you've got operational capability and you either have money or you have the ability to get money. Now is a great time to take some good little brands or good large brands and get them to the next level by plugging in your operational chops. So yeah, great point.
Awesome. All right, so just to have a little fun here before we close this episode, bro? You've got kids, you're wrangling things, you got multiple businesses. What do you do for fun, man? What is it that keeps you occupied if you're going to try to recharge your batteries?
I train, so I lift, I run. When the weather is not too bad, I paddleboard. I play the drums. I managed to squeeze like 5 or 6 references to Metallica into the book, which I was pretty pleased with. What else? We have beautiful scenery around here in Scotland, so when I can, I get out there and I play with my kids. Those are the main things. And I'm also obsessed with building brands and the kind of the whole consumer space. It's great fun. So yeah, that's what I do.
I love it. That's so good. And then the final question here is, we close every episode with this kind of return on investment question. So Is there a habit or hack or practice rhythm in your life, like professional or personal, that you feel like gives you an outrageous return on investment?
Ooh. Uh, I I bet you've had a whole bunch of guests being like, "Oh yeah, I wake up and I meditate and I have this morning routine, all this stuff." In an ideal world, I would have all that, but I
Yeah.
tend to wake up and immediately it's like I'm running around after 3 under 5s. Um, okay,
Yeah, by the
number
way,
1.
life hacks when you have 3 kids under the age of 5 are like it would have been bullshit if you just said anything but that, right, Ben? I mean, it's like this is like we're just trying to survive right now. Like I'm trying to
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, like, that's pretty much what I do. That's my main hack, but my I guess my other is professional is, I partner with people who are smarter than me.
Mm,
And I think one of my main philosophies actually in both business and, you know, personal life are, do what experts tell me to do. So if I'm not an expert in something, I will seek out those who know and I will follow their advice. Um, which is why it always amazes me when people try to sell their business on their own or something like that. Um, it's just silly. Uh, here's a key lesson that I've learned in my career so far. Cheap is expensive, and expensive is cheap. In other words, it pays to invest in getting things right the first time. So let me give you an example. I'm from Aberdeen in Scotland. We're all very tight. We don't like to spend money. So I was incredibly smug when I thought I could trademark my first brand on my own. And indeed I did. And I got my certificates back and I was very pleased because it cost me like £200. But about a year later, I was getting some free legal advice from a local IP firm who were doing some stuff down the local library. And they took a look at my trademarks and they basically said, look, these are weak. They're flimsy. You've left the brand wide open. And they were right. I'd had a lucky escape because the depth and breadth of the protection of the trademarks was poor because I wasn't an expert. So I ended up coughing up and investing money to have them redone professionally. And I'm so glad I learned that lesson because when I learned that lesson, I learned the importance of investing in intellectual property. And so it was around about then that I patented a product that I had developed. And not long after that, two things happened. One, somebody accused me of infringing their patent with that product, which of course I wasn't. And I'd learned to pay for expensive lawyers to get me through it. And two, other people started to rip me off. And of course, I was able to get rid of them with the expensive patents that I'd had produced.
mm.
So cheap is expensive, expensive is cheap.
I love it. My football coach in high school, his saying was, "Do it right, do it light, do it wrong, do it long." Right? That's the
Pretty much. Yeah.
and I think we have to be really careful to not cut the corners that are going to snip the nose off your dumb lines. I think that's a good story there, Ben.
Yep.
Well, Ben, you're awesome, dude. Thank you for joining the show today. Guys, if you haven't picked up Quit Stalling and Build Your Brand by the man here, Ben Leonard, I do highly recommend it. I read a ton of books, and to be honest with you, I try to avoid some of the books from our industry because a lot of them can kind of feel like marketing speak a little bit. This one's actually incredibly well put together, Ben, and it's easy to
No.
follow and it's very easy to apply. So if you're where Ben was prior to getting the health wake up and building his own brand, and you feel like you're stalling, hey, a practical step is spend a few bucks, buy the book, read it, reach out to Ben if you need help on the consulting front. Ben, I'm going to make sure they have links to your site so they can find you. But any final words for the group before we close for today?
Uh, I don't know. Just make sure you're doing what you're excited by. If you're not, it might be time to change path. If you're on the cusp of starting your business, go for it. And if you've got a business that's been going for a while, but it's not represented by a true brand, it's probably time to make a change. But you absolutely can do that.
Well said. And again, for those of you guys who make it 37, 38 minutes into this show, Ben and I just want to say thanks. Your time is valuable. Thank you for listening to today's Return on Podcast. We hope that you grab some nuggets that'll serve you. And again, we'll make sure you have the links to Ben's stuff so that you can reach out to him if you want to. So until we see you next week, take care, guys.